Joe Hill.
That was amazing. That was great. That killed. I wanted to go on the road with music too. I don't think I could travel with a full band, but I had an idea to learn the accordion, just like maybe one song, and I thought maybe like I wanted to do something really metal, so maybe like the Final Countdown. I could just start readings with, and I think that would be cool.
You might want to test that out outside Piccadilly Circus tube station first with a hat.
Yeah, and see how it goes.
Well,
The great thing is I think this is one of these cases where the worse I am, the better it would be. The more fun it would be for everyone. That actually technical proficiency would probably be missing the point. But anyway, but no accordion tonight.
No, not tonight. I wanted to start with something before talking about the work and serious things. I was thinking, I remembered your first UK convention way back when PS Publishing brought out 20th Century Ghosts, and no one knew who Joe Hill was at the time. And you were exactly as you are now, very quiet. You didn't say much. You sort of retiring in the corner. And since then, you've done many, many conventions. You've guest of honours. You've been everywhere. And I just wondered what was the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to you at a convention from then to now.
I don't know that I've been embarrassed on stage too many times, or that I've had too many embarrassing experiences. I've learned something important about publicity. Sort of when you're doing publicity, when you're doing public speaking, or radio or TV or whatever. If you're going to be in front of a lot of people on stage, I think the key is to take your time in the men's room, because when you just want to be patient. Because if you're nervous and you're in a rush, you wind up with spotting and clammy underpants. And even if other people don't notice, and they will, but even if other people don't notice, you'll feel it, and you just won't be able to be cool because you'll just be sort of constantly with the wet undies. So that's what I've absorbed in the last 7 years. I do remember that first convention. It was
a god-awful hotel in Birmingham.
It was in Walsall.
That was it.
It was in Walsall. I couldn't get published in America to save my life. And I had a book of short stories that was turned down everywhere. It was turned down everywhere in New York. It was turned down everywhere in London. And the last editor to look at it was the great Pete Crowther, who handles PS Publishing's line. And they agreed to do a limited edition of my first collection, 20th Century Ghosts. And that was my first publication here in England. And it followed a lot of short fiction sales that were all to English magazines, because I just couldn't get published over in America, and I don't know why, really.
You're one of us at heart.
In some ways, I do feel very close to the British fantasy community. But I remember getting on the train to go to Walsall. I was really excited. It was the first book, and I was just going to see it for the first time. And the conductor said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Walsall." He said, "How long are you going to be there for?" I said, 3 days. And he said, "That's about 2 days too long."
Now, quite recently, you lucky bastard, they made a film of Gollancz with Harry Potter himself in the lead role.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Were you hands-on involved, or did you sit back and just reap the glory?
So my second novel is a book called Horns, and it's about a decent young man named Ig Parrish. And Ig's girlfriend is murdered under cloudy circumstances. And in the small town of Gideon, New Hampshire, most people believe that Ig is the person who killed her, even though there's not a whole lot of evidence to link him to the crime. But they believe that he did it, and he's under a cloud of suspicion. He's been very much demonized by his small town.
Did I do something wrong? Am I?
I had something very similar to this happen just a little while ago on the train. So anyway, Ig gets drunk one night, he goes out, he curses God, and when he wakes up the next morning, he has a hell of a hangover. And he also has a pair of horns sprouting from his forehead. And with the horns come all the power of the devil. And he decides to use these powers to find the person who killed his girlfriend. So it was picked up by Mandalay Pictures, and the French director Alexandre Aja decided he wanted to direct it. And we got a great screenplay from Keith Bunin, And then Daniel Radcliffe read the screenplay and the novel and decided he wanted to play the part, and they went and made the film.
Did you do any input on the script?
I was an executive producer on the film, and I think they give you that credit because executive pain in the ass would look so weird on the screen. Executive of getting underfoot, making trouble. For the most part, I tried to stay out of the way. I did read several drafts of the script. I made some suggestions, and I looked at some early cuts of the film, and I made some suggestions. But, you know, there's really two ways to screw up an adaptation. There are so many ways to go wrong. But the first big way is you can not be faithful to the book at all. You can completely forget the source material to the point where people run off and make a film and you almost wonder why did they bother adapting anything when they wanted to do this other story. And then the other way to screw things up is to be so faithful you wind up with a picture that's just dead on the screen. You know, it has no interior life. It's just a book with like being enacted.
Because it's a very different storytelling form, isn't it? I mean,
It
you work
is.
in lots of different storytelling forms, so you probably understand that. You know, you do the graphic novels, you do the short stories, you do the novels.
A lot of novelists, just as a point of comparison, a lot of novelists come into comic books and they think that comic books are just novels with pictures, and they're not. And this is why when so many novelists try to write comics, they suck. You know, and it's the same, and it's also true of film. And what I really wanted was Alexandra Aja and Daniel to go out and make a film that they were excited about, that was a work of art, that was true to itself and had its own ambitions and ideas, and you know, that hopefully would have the spirit of the book, but would be free to be its own thing.
Yeah.
And they did that, and I'm very excited with what they came out with, which I think is, you know, a really wonderful and truly strange film.
And when is it out over here?
It will be out in England on Halloween. It's out in America at the same time. You know, we showed it in Toronto, and someone after it was over said, you know, the first part was so funny, and then it was very tragic, and then it was very scary. And what genre is it? And I said, it's a tragicoma horror. You know, but some people don't like when their mashed potatoes touch their peas. They don't like the flavors mixing together and being weird.
Ants in the sweat.
You know, but I kind of like it when it's all crammed together, you know, and I love like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which was so funny and so exciting and so sad and had this lovely, you know, romance in it, and I kind of want all of it, and I'm very greedy that way, and so Horn sort of has all of it. It has this great coming-of-age story, and it has this great love story, and it has this kind of gross, naughty humor that's, you know, packed into the front end, and yeah.
I was going to say, humour is something that comes up quite a lot in your work.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you do have, even I mean, Nosferatu, Christmas Land. I mean, I was always a bit scared of Santa as a kid anyway, because, you know, a strange old man comes in your bedroom once a year.
Yeah.
But to take something that kids look forward to so much and make it into this god-awful, there is a humour in that, you know? And do you think humour and horror sit side by side, and they should sit side by side?
So the third book is Nosferatu. It's NOS4A2 in America, NOS4R2 here, because I had a big fight with my editor, Jillian, about English pronunciation. Because when it's a vanity license plate, when you sound it out, it's supposed to spell the German word for vampire, Nosferatu. And apparently it wouldn't sound out correctly to English ears, so we have to have the R in there, which is weird because in America, if I stuck the R in there, it would become Nosfartu, and which is sort of not the thing I was going for. But it is a story about an evil old man with a car that runs on human souls instead of gasoline. And he's been around for a century, and he abducts children, and he drains sort of all the decency out of them. He drains their souls out of them. And all that's left afterwards is happiness and cruelty. And he dumps them off in this dreadful fantasy amusement park called Christmas Land. And the genesis of that is this thing that Lon Chaney used to say. Lon Chaney used to say, "There's nothing funny about a clown at midnight." And I always thought that was such a chilling observation. And you know, Christmas music, you know, is such a happy part of the Yule season. And you know, and I know here in Waterstones they like to start piping in the Christmas music about October 15th, you know, and everyone loves it. But under the wrong conditions, Christmas music, I see some people shaking their head. Not so much. My favorite Christmas song is a song by Everclear called I Will Be Hating You for Christmas, but that's another, But so the thing is about Christmas music is, if you were walking through the woods and you went past a derelict house with all the windows smashed in and graffiti on the walls, and inside in the shadows, you heard jingle bells echoing out. You wouldn't knock on the door. You'd walk faster to get away from there. And so that's a lot of what horror does, is it takes something safe and familiar and then twists it, poisons it, and makes it wrong. And that's what I'm all about, is poisoning your pleasures. Finding whatever makes you happy and ruining it. That's what I always hope for. But the other thing is, just not to blab over, but
No, you blab. That's what you're here for.
Well, the other thing is about, I was kind of messed up as a kid. Like when I was a kid, everyone would have posters on their wall of like rock stars or sports stars and stuff. And when I was 12, I got a gift subscription to Fangoria Magazine. And this was like heaven to me. And Fangoria, most of you probably don't know Fangoria, but it's a magazine dedicated to gross out special effects, basically. And, it was always, they would have like centerfolds, like dirty centerfolds, only instead of ladies in their undies, or not in their undies, it was always like some guy with half his face clawed off and the eyeball popping out. And I'd like stick these up on my walls, like so cool. And all my heroes were the gross out effects guys, like Tom Savini and Rob Bottin and Stan Winston. They were my heroes. And at some point I observed that when the gross out effects guys were talking about a really good jump, the alien bursting out of someone's chest, they always called that a gag. It was a gag when something, and of course when you see something really nasty in a film or something really upsetting, you feel a tendency to gag. So I just think it's interesting that a gag can be used to describe both humor and horror. And I think that humor and horror are the same sides of, two sides of the same coin. When we see one of the Three Stooges hitting another with a hammer, we laugh. But when you see Jason Voorhees hitting someone with a hammer, we scream. It's the exact same sequence. The only thing which is different is the lighting.
Bit of blood.
Yeah.
Now you've crossed the streams of your comic work and your novel work with the Wraith book you've got coming out, which I know has come out, I think 5 parts came out and then the 2 more have been combined.
Yeah, and now it's all in one hardcover, which you guys should have over here.
I think is it next month that it comes out?
Well, yeah, I expect, because in England you guys usually get the dregs
after
everyone else is done with it. It's out in America, but maybe you guys don't have it for another month, I don't know. But we'll be wrapping fish in it by then over in America. But yeah, no, so I was a comic book writer before I was a novelist. I wrote 3 novels that I was never able to sell. I wrote one novel called The Fear Tree that I spent 3 years on, this huge epic fantasy novel, which became a massive international bestseller in my imagination, but in real life was turned down in New York City and London, and then for a final kick in the pants was turned down in Canada. Just when I thought I couldn't be shamed anymore. And I sort of felt like maybe novels weren't going to happen for me, that I had taken my best swings, and that I just didn't have the talent for that it wasn't going to work out. But I had started to write short stories, many of which were published over here, a few of which were published in America, and I felt that I had success there, and I felt like I knew how to write a good short story. And one of these short stories was in a best of collection, and it caught the attention of a talent scout at Marvel Comics. And she got in touch with me and asked me if I had any interest in writing about guys in tights punching each other in the face. And I said, who doesn't? And in fact, I had always loved comics, and I grew up on Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and comics were very important to me. And so I wrote a Spider-Man, 11-page Spider-Man story, and that was published before any of my novels, and that was kind of, for me, that was my big break. And I felt like I had discovered something special, because I knew I could write a short story that could get published in the High Plains Literary Review, but how many people were really going to read it? 300? Maybe? But if I wrote the same story and Spider-Man was the hero, and it was published by Marvel Comics, that would be read by 30,000 people. And I really desperately wanted to entertain a big audience. You know, and so I felt like I had something in comics, and eventually I did wind up writing my own comic called Lock and Key, which kept me occupied for about 6 years.
And how did you find the collaborative element of because that was, I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, Gabriel Rodriguez, yeah. So Lock and Key is a comic book about a house in New England that's full of impossible keys. Every key unlocks a different door and activates a different power. The comic book was actually made into a TV series by Fox Television and is now entering its 3rd hit season in my imagination. But in real life, the pilot never made it on the air, which is too bad because it came out really, really well. It was directed by Mark Romanek, who did 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams, and you know, it just looked terrific. It looked like, you know, Steven Spielberg.
I mean, it was a really great comic series anyway. You know, it was like really good, creepy stuff.
Collaborating is awesome, you know, because with Gabriel Rodriguez, he's like my soul brother. We're like an old married couple. He finishes all my sentences for me, and you know, all the same stuff makes us laugh. And you know, whatever I would write scripts, and whatever I thought I was going to see for the art, he always met my expectations, and it was even better. And that's why it's so hard to quit comics, because every day you see a new page of art from the artist you're working with, and it always just completely blows you away that you get to work with these amazing, brilliant, talented people and tell them what to draw. I mean, what a trip that's, you know, and in Wraith, at one point, there's this petting zoo in Christmas Land. Wraith is set in the same universe as Nosferatu. You don't have to read Nosferatu to enjoy it, and if you read it, it won't ruin anything in Nosferatu. There are no cross spoilers. I was very careful. It's its own story. But we spend a lot of time in Christmas Land, and at one point, we go to the, I'm sorry about spitting on the person in the front row.
It's all right, he's
actually used to it. He works in publishing, so he's used to being spit on. There's a petting zoo in Christmas Land called Santa Claus. Get it? Claus. Anyway, you guys are hopeless. A criminal, an outlaw, sets everything free, and at one point there's a full-page illustration of him riding a woolly mammoth, like, yeah, while kids are trampled and stuff, and there's like, you know, flying reindeer get set loose, and I'm trying to think what some of the other critters were. They were all there. There was a Yeti, a Rankin and Bass Yeti, like, remember from the old claymation, like, Christmas cartoons? Did you guys have those over here? Did you get those?
No, I don't think so.
And they say this place has culture. So, you know, but it has a really cool, like, Yeti and stuff. It's cool.
Now, apart from your dad, who obviously is everybody of our generation's inspiration.
I come from a family of writers. My mom writes. My dad has also written some books. He's shown some early promise, and, you know, I'm rooting for him.
But aside from him, who are your influences?
That's when people are always like, you know, what are your favorite books? It's always like, if the top 5 aren't all by people in my family, I'm going to hurt someone's feelings. You know, because my brother also writes. My brother is the novelist Owen King, and wrote the funniest book of last year called Double Feature, which I'm sure Waterstones will sell to you for an excellent price if you ask at the desk. But anyway, my favorite book is probably True Grit by Charles Portis, which has been made into 2 movies that aren't even half as good as the novel. I've read the novel over and over again. My favorite writer who's alive and is about my age is David Mitchell, who I think can do anything and make it look easy. And I've read his books over and over again, and you know, he's playing a game. David Mitchell is playing a game that is so far removed from what all the rest of us are doing. The only thing it compares to is, like, you know, Michael Jordan in basketball, or you know, or the Beatles. You know, what Lennon and McCartney. I'm serious. I'm completely serious. I mean, his level of talent is at that, you know, Paul McCartney level.
Is he the one that did the Twitter story?
He did do a Twitter. Yeah. He did do a Twitter story, and but he also did Cloud Atlas. For God's sake, don't see the movie. Just read the book. 1,000 Autumns of Jacob de Zoet, which is just brilliant, moving, and is a horror novel. And his new book, The Bone Clocks, is a horror novel. his publishers aren't going to sell it that way. But it's like if Ian McEwan decided to write a novelization of Scanners, you know, where the guy's head explodes and stuff. It's like that. It's awesome. Yeah.
What's next for you, book-wise?
Oh, I'm all
What
done.
if we
I'm all done. I've finished.
throw something at
I-
you?
seriously, it's been all downhill since the first book, and no. I have a novel I'm almost finished with called The Fireman, and hopefully that'll be out next year if I can, if I can keep going, if I can get it done soon enough so that my editors can take a whack at it. So I'm working on that. Horns is out in October, and so that's very exciting.
Did I read somewhere you'd written a pilot?
Yeah, and I'm doing a TV series. There was this great old horror TV series in the 80s called Tales from the Dark Side. And I was asked to sort of reboot it, which I've done. And the first thing I did was drop the Tales of, so the show is just called Dark Side. And it is kind of like it sort of shares the same DNA of the original show, but is also kind of its own thing. It's because I kind of feel like after the X-Files, you can't just do a show like The Twilight Zone or Tales from the Dark Side anymore. People want those recurring characters. They want to feel like there's a bigger story in play. So I'm doing that, and that'll probably be on its second hit season in my imagination in a couple of years.
What's your preferred format? Short story, comic, novel, screenplay?
I don't have a preferred, a preference for one. It's in different times, different ones are fun.
How would you decide which story fits what format? I mean, short stories.
Well, in the case of Lock and Key, I always knew it was a comic because it started as a pitch for Marvel Comics, which they turned down. I had pitched them a whole bunch of stuff, including Baby Hulk, because at the time I had a toddler, and I didn't know about tantrums. And I just thought, tantrums are so fearsome when they scream and they fall down and they throw the plastic truck because they don't know how to speak and they don't know how to ask for what they want. And I thought, what if you hulked out and you could throw a real truck? Think about how tragic that would be. So anyway, Baby Hulk never went anywhere, but Lock and Key started as a comic book pitch and eventually wound up being a comic for IDW. I love comics, and they're so much fun and they're so addictive to write and also very addictive to read. It is like huffing paint. It's the huffing paint of the literary world. Just raise your hands if you love to huff paint. So anyway, but I was gonna say I am actually taking a break from comics for a couple of years. I'm gonna, I finished Wraith and that was great. Lock and Key is all finished, but I want to take some time to finish. The Fireman is another very long novel, and I haven't worked on short stories in years, and I want to take most of next year to write short stories.
And speaking of short stories, and this has actually got bugger all to do with anyone else in this room, but when I was doing my digging around stalking you for this, I saw you'd written a story called Wolverton Station.
Yeah, Wolverton Station.
And I need to read that story that I can't get on Amazon because I used to live at Wolverton.
See, but it's like some people in England
I was like, man, this is Wolverton. This is like my manor. I need to read the story.
I wrote a story about American capitalists bringing an American chain to English shores to put out the mom and pop stores and stuff. It's basically sort of a Starbucks clone called Jimmy Coffee. And he gets on a train to Wolverton Station, and then several wolf men get on with him.
I found that happened a lot when I lived in Wolverton.
Yeah, well, I was texting with Warren Ellis, and I was up in Edinburgh, and I said I really want to see a lake monster, and he said any pub after 8 Friday night. Guys, thanks so much for listening to me.
Thanks very much.